Chapter 443. Manager Lee, who had been dealing with things outside all year round, only wanted to say, "Madam, does the boss know that you play this game? And to find a guru to guide you. Are you sure the boss will be happy?" But Manager Lee, who had always been professional, didn't say these things. He only called the boss and was in charge of informing the head of the family. After that, he went to book a plane ticket back to China. However, on this day, Fifth Avenue. A seemingly casual newsstand. A very old building. Around it were people coming and going, people attending the masquerade party. A man wearing a black feather mask, with a slender figure, turned sideways and walked towards the newsstand while the people were still celebrating. No one would have thought that there would be a secret door in this newsstand. After entering, it was a very quiet bar. The people in the bar didn't seem to want others to know their identity. The surrounding lights were also very dim, full of mystery. The man took off his mask, revealing his handsome Asian face. Fuck. Who else could it be other than Hoshino? He walked to the bar counter and knocked on the table. He shook the wine glass, and the bartender immediately pushed a document to him. "This is the recent hacking incident, take a look." Hoshino opened the document and read from start to finish. There was no trace of Z's involvement in any of the incidents. The bartender didn't say much, only saying, "The price remains the same as before." Hoshino heard this, signed a check and placed it on the bar counter. After the bartender kept it, he said thank you for your patronage. But Hoshino was not the same as when he came. His eyes clearly dimmed. Even though he put on his mask again, it couldn't hide the gloominess that emanated from his body. There was no news of Z. Not even a bit. Hearing such an answer, he didn't even know how he left the bar. How could Hoshino not understand? All the signs pointed to Z's possible absence. He had always been unwilling to admit it. How could he admit the fact that that person was gone? Hoshino lowered his eyes, as if something had been dug out of his heart. So much so that when others touched him, he didn't feel anything. Returning to the street, it was bustling with people again. Hoshino's attire was undoubtedly eye-catching, so it was normal for beautiful women to come over to talk to him. However, the beauty could also see that the man in front of her seemed to have lost all of his emotions. Whatever she said, he didn't seem to hear. That unspeakable sadness was so huge that it stunned the beauty who was approaching Hoshino. She couldn't help but remind him in English, "Hey, handsome, your phone keeps ringing. Are you sure it's not something serious?" Hoshino finally came back to his senses. He thanked him faintly and pressed the call button mechanically. It was a call from a teammate, and it was about the competition, as well as the recent developments in the esports circle. When he heard the other party talk about the public opinion on the internet for the past 2 days, Hoshino's hand that was about to hang up abruptly paused, his eyes radiating a dazzling light. "You're saying that all the official verified accounts released the same message at the same time?" Chapter 444. Posting the same message at the same time and the user didn't do anything about it. Hoshino was almost certain that this was a hacking incident. But how could such a thing happen in the esports industry? Where did this happen? Hoshino got straight to the point. "Tokyo." That person shook his head. "No, it's China. Recently, there has been a lot of activity there. You know, right? That Chinese MVP who once stood shoulder to shoulder with you seems to have recovered. Right now, he's leading his team in China's regional competition. Speaking of which, when are you coming back? We've scheduled a visit to China next month to watch their national competition. Don't tell me that you're not going to attend again. I will be attending." Hoshino smiled, his gaze sweeping over the cheering crowd. "I'll go first, we'll meet up in China." "What? Wait a minute, Xing. Before the person on the other end of the call, Hoshino hung up. He was still wearing the black feather mask that symbolized nobility, but his aura was much gentler than before. Even if it was just a similar feeling, he wanted to take a look. There weren't many hacking incidents in China. But what if it was Z? Wasn't it because of this faint hope that he could persevere until now? The night scene on Fifth Avenue was very different from Lin City. The European-style buildings and clean and retro streets didn't have fog. On the other hand, Lin City was covered in fog with the unique coldness of the north. It was time for a competition. No one fell asleep the moment they laid down. When they woke up the next day, even Lin Feng was telling himself, this time, he had to break into the National League. The reason why he loved gaming so much. Other than esports itself, there were also the people who accompanied him. Once they retired, they would no longer work hard for the same thing without any scruples. He couldn't leave any regrets. He didn't want the guy beside him to see him fail like last year. That wouldn't be handsome at all. Lin Feng lifted his thin lips. He hooked his bag with one hand and placed the other on Yunhu's shoulder, walking out of the hotel just like that. There was a reason why these two people were called a couple. They had grown up together. The Yun family had said many times that they wanted to send Yunhu overseas. This battle was really the last time they fought side by side. Therefore, he could only win and not lose. Fu Jiu was probably the most relaxed. The jade-like young man stood under the light, wearing his battle uniform. His thin lips seemed to emit a faint glow. This was the scene Qin Mo saw when he opened the door. No matter who saw the other party's refreshing appearance, their anger would dissipate a little. Qin Mo didn't ask how the youngster found his room. The two of them naturally walked together until the entire team gathered together. Sometimes, because one had been looking forward to it for too long and had worked hard for too long, when the day really came, one's emotions would not show. He wasn't in the mood to eat breakfast, but he fed himself until he was full. It was unknown whether everyone's heart was beating at the same frequency at this moment. They wore the same battle uniform, but it was a long battle line. The moment Qin Mo said, "Let's go," the hot-bloodedness seemed to be able to ignite a bright light from every member of the team. Chapter 445. They didn't know if enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. The Supreme Alliance's first team was none other than the Yunzhong team. This was considered the Yunzhong team's home ground. After all, it was in Lin City. This match was different from the one in Tokyo. At that time, even if it was an international exchange, it was just a friendly match. But today, it was a real esports match. All the major online platforms in the country would be broadcasting it live. For example, Douyu, Battle Flag, and so on. Don't underestimate the influence of Hero. Many celebrities also like to play this game. Therefore, even if it was a small regional competition, it attracted a lot of media attention. Of course, the teams that came to the competition also knew about it. There was another reason why so many reporters came. It was because the Yunzhong team, one of the top 4 teams in the country, and the extremely popular Supreme Alliance were here. It was no wonder that the former didn't like the latter. Because some people always thought that the Supreme Alliance was just a little handsome. Why did they have more screen time than them? In the Yunzhong team, there were even some arrogant newbies who thought that the reason why Almighty Qin was bragged about so much was because of Feng Yi's publicity. If he was just an ordinary person like them, there wouldn't be so many people saying that he was the most valuable esports player in the past decade. As a provincial team and one of the top 4 teams in the country, the Yunzhong team was very strong both in terms of fans and backup. The competition was divided into 1v1, 2v2, and 5v5. Each team member could only participate in one of them. When it came to the second match, there would be a change of players. This was the competition system. 1v1 would compete first, and the second would follow. After the commentators were in place, the online live broadcast officially began. As everyone can see, the players of the two teams are in place. The entire competition will last less than 2 hours. Fans and otakus will have some benefits to watch. Oh right, old Jiang, you've been in the esports circle for some time now. I wonder which team you're more optimistic about this time. There were usually 2 commentators in an esports competition to hype up the atmosphere. Of course it's Yunjong. The shoutcaster straightened his earpiece and said in a clear and logical manner, "You and I both know Qin Mo's maneuvering. He is definitely at the level of the Almighty and no one is his match in a one-on-one battle. But you can't deny that he has been resting for the past year. For an esports player, if they don't practice often, their hand speed will decline. Qin Mo is no longer at his peak. Besides, even with an almighty like Qin Mo, he can only participate in 1 match. What about the other 2? The scale of the Yunjong team wasn't just 1 level higher than last year. Moreover, the Supreme Alliance lost to the Yunjong team last year, which was why they didn't enter the national qualifier. Therefore, I would definitely stand on the Yunjong team side. Of course, this was all my personal opinion. Fans of the Supreme Alliance, please don't criticize me. It was obvious that the commentator was looking at the game with a biased eye. After he said that, the atmosphere couldn't help but become a little awkward. However, what the live streaming platform cared about was not these, but the number of viewers and topics. That was why they had hired this commentator. Chapter 446. The other commentator didn't know how to respond to the conversation. After all, he didn't have any opinion on any team, so he could only change the topic. The Supreme Alliance is here. Indeed, every one of them is handsome. But esports isn't about who is handsome. The shoutcaster called Old Jiang always had a disdainful smile on his face. Even the people sitting next to him could tell, let alone the Supreme Alliance's side. Fu Jiu sat on the rightmost seat. With a lollipop in her mouth, she tilted her head and looked at the shoutcaster team. She didn't know why, but there was a hint of a smile on her face. Her smile was incredible. So many fangirls were going crazy. Spade. Ah! My big spade. Don't underestimate the lungs of the girls. Their shouts could almost flip the entire arena. Old Jiang, look at the atmosphere. It's not just handsome. My opinion is to look at the competition. The performance of some girls who don't play hero can't be used as a reference. Old Jiang, don't you know this Spade Z? He is the rookie king of Zone C, the winner of 99 first kills. Old Jiang, why do you only look at the surface like the young people? No matter how good he is still an amateur. He hasn't gone through professional training, so everything is unknown. According to what you said, Supreme Alliance has no chance of winning. I've said from the beginning that I'm optimistic about the Yunjong team. If I were to predict, this match is likely to be 2-1. Supreme Alliance is likely to win the first 1v1. After all, they have Qin Mo. Are you saying that Supreme Alliance will send Qin Mo for the 1v1? What else? If it's a 1v1, Supreme Alliance might win one. When it comes to the team competition, Qin Mo, Yunhu, and even with Lin Feng, Supreme Alliance's overall fighting power is still inferior to the Yunjong team. Since one person can only participate in one match, Qin Mo is the most suitable one. Old Jiang, did you forget that Supreme Alliance recruited the Almighty north of Yin Mountain this year? He used to be an Almighty, Old Jiang. Yin Mountain isn't young anymore. He does have experience, but we don't know if he has weakened over the years. Wait a minute. The lineup for the 1v1 is out. There's no need to be so anxious. It must be Qin, before the commentator named Old Jiang could finish his sentence, he was choked by the game ID that appeared on the big screen. Spade Z vs Ling Xiao. Supreme Alliance didn't send Qin Mo, but Fu Zhou. To think that Old Jiang was still patting his chest and talking about his speculation. But this time, his entire body stiffened. This slap to the face was really awkward. The commentator with the surname Zhang, who was sitting next to him, saw his expression and couldn't help but laugh out loud. It seems that Old Jiang is wrong this time. Chapter 447. The shoutcaster's voice was transmitted through the microphone. This meant that before she put on her headphones, she could hear the shoutcaster's words. She tilted her head in that direction again. Her silver hair fell down, revealing a devilish handsomeness, like a vampire's smile before sucking blood. Dangerous and unpredictable. But someone else said, "This Spade Z isn't that great, is he just going to let the shoutcaster talk?" Even though I think Spade Z is good, everyone has seen Ling Xiao's maneuvering. It's hard to say who will win this match. Even Spade's fans felt their hearts skip a beat when they saw the battle list. If Big Spade had met someone else, they wouldn't have been so worried. It was the first match of the National League. And it was a 1v1. Why did Supreme Alliance send Big Spade to fight Ling Xiao? After all, the opponent was really strong. Why did the wise and mighty Lord Feng Yi make such a decision? Uncontrollably, the fans turned to look at Feng Yi. In fact, it wasn't just the fans, even the Supreme Alliance members were looking at Feng Yi. Feng Yi pointed, directing them to the Almighty sitting at the player's seat. When everyone saw it was Qin Mo, the lethality of their gazes weakened. Which meant that Almighty Qin had sent Big Spade. Almighty Qin had chosen this battle order. Why? Lin Feng wanted to ask this question too. Captain, it isn't good to let Little Spade fight Ling Xiao alone. After all, this is his first time playing a professional game. What if he really lost? Qin Mo was still indifferent and dignified. His tall and straight back was draped with his uniform jacket. His gaze swept over Lin Feng. What's wrong with that? It's just the right way to deal with someone who thinks he's the best after a confession. Why did the Almighty's words sound like he was asking his current girlfriend to slap the person who had feelings for her in the face? It had to be said. The Almighty's method was too profound. Other than Yun, whose finger pausing for a moment, the slow Lin Feng didn't understand at all. Captain, are you testing Little Spade's loyalty to Supreme Alliance? Don't worry, he knows what's important. An ex-boyfriend is nothing. Ex-boyfriend. Qin Mo's voice was calm as he raised his eyebrows in Lin Feng's direction. Yun, who pulled Lin Feng back and stuffed him with half a cup of water. Drink more water and talk less. No, I'm afraid that if I drink too much, I'll want to boo during the match. Then hold it and pretend to drink. With Yun whose control, Lin Feng wouldn't be hurt by the cold air emitted by Qin Mo's ex-boyfriend. It was inexplicably unpleasant to the ears. On the other hand, the members of the Yun Zhong team smiled when they heard the name list. Even when Fu Zhou walked over to the computer, they were still shouting. Are you sure you did that to my captain? Pfft, he might take the opportunity to throw the match. Chapter 448. In the face of such provocation, Fu Zhou didn't even look at him. She sat directly in front of the computer, moved her fingers, and put on her headphones. Then, she opened a typing window and tested the sensitivity of the keyboard. Seeing this, Ling Xiao also looked down. The youth now was indeed different from the one he knew in the past. If he had been like this before, he might have been more or less interested. But until now, he wasn't sure if this was a new trick of loosening the reins only to grasp better. Whether it was or not. He really wanted to trample this person under his feet now. And Qin Mo. Was he looking down on him? Sending a newcomer to 1v1 with him? Then he would show him the strength of the national top 4. Booting up and logging in. Whether it was Fu Jiu or Ling Xiao, they were very fast when doing this. The profile of their faces with the black headphones revealed a sense of coolness. But Fu Jiu was the only one who was playing games and eating a lollipop at the same time. While the players are choosing their characters, let's analyze why Supreme Alliance sent Spade Z out. Just now, old Jiang said that Supreme Alliance played a bad hand. I just thought of a possibility. Could it be that Qin Mo's hand hasn't recovered and isn't suitable for a 21v1? That's why he sent Spade Z out. The commentator's surname Zhang is still relatively neutral. Old Jiang laughed. Then Supreme Alliance is in trouble. If Qin Mo's hand hasn't recovered yet, I'm afraid they can't even win one game. This is really the home court of the Yunzhong. Okay, enough talk. Let's watch the game. The two players are ready, and the national regional competition officially begins. As the commentator's voice fell, Fu Jiu and Ling Xiao entered the hero page at the same time. According to the esports competition rules, the opponent's crystal city had to be conquered before 3 deaths. Once someone was killed 3 times, the game would automatically end, and whoever died would be the loser. The fans began to worry again. Because the game character chosen by Ling Xiao had a much higher attack power than Big Spade to a certain extent. Ling Xiao also laughed at this moment. He stared at the screen as if he was a different person. His left hand was on the keyboard, and his right hand was moving the mouse. He bypassed the defense tower in the middle lane and directly chased in Fu Jiu's direction. A series of critical hits were about to land. If the person standing in front wasn't Fu Jiu, but someone else, they would definitely be trapped there and killed instantly. But because it was Fu Jiu, the situation of being insta-killed did not happen. As the silver light fell, she operated the mouse and suddenly jumped to the left. With a beautiful maneuver, she directly crossed the grass and avoided most of the shots. Even so, she had lost 1/3 of her HP. This battle situation was directly synchronized on the big screen. The members of the Yunzhong team were delighted. It's useless, don't think you can escape Captain's pursuit just because you dodged that. Spade Z is dead for sure this time. The FC King is just a title that can be used in front of ordinary gamers. Now that he's here, let him know that with us around, he isn't fit to be called king. On the screen, Spade Z was still moving, but this time, she wasn't killing anyone on sight like before. Instead, she was attacking the defense tower. Chapter 449. His HP dropped as soon as the game started. This had never happened to Spade Z before. Did this mean that Spade Z was really going to lose? The fans felt their hearts wrench. But at this moment, the shoutcaster added, I'm afraid Spade Z is doomed this time. Is there any suspense? Old Jiang chuckled. Right now, it's like he's being chased by Ling Xiao. He doesn't dare to get close to Ling Xiao at all. It's already a miracle that he didn't die. I think Spade Z's standard is basically at this level. I can only say that the professional league isn't suitable for a FC King like him. Old Jiang was obviously looking down on Spade Z's skills by saying that. Lin Feng turned towards Qin Mo once more. Qin Mo lifted his lids and glanced at him. You have to believe in your teammates on the battlefield. Besides, Fu Jiu is competing now. Do you think he will lose? This was a very calm rhetorical question. However, it carried a very strong sense of oppression. In other words, that person would never lose. Lin Feng paused. Captain had never given such an evaluation to anyone before. Little Spade was the first. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, a voice suddenly rang out. A line of words popped up on the screen. Fu Jiu conquered the opponent's defense tower. Ling Xiao's speed was also very fast. He quickly skimmed behind Fu Jiu. It was probably to catch Fu Jiu off guard. It had to be said that his strategy was very good. On the screen, Fu Jiu's HP dropped by half again. However, she was still not immobilized. It was still an extremely fast movement. Ling Xiao chased after him. When they reached a certain place, they realized that Spadesy had already returned to the city. What a pity. The commentator, Old Jiang, couldn't help but say, Spadesy's HP was almost gone. It seems like luck is important in this game, but no one can guarantee that their luck will be so good all the way. Spadesy still has to fight. I hope he doesn't act like a deserter and only knows how to hide. Otherwise, this game will be too boring. Some of the audience agreed with Old Jiang's words. They were here to watch the match. The so-called competition was a slaughter. In such a large-scale regional competition, there were countless almighties. People would only watch if the killing was spectacular. What's the point of hiding like this? However, even so many people didn't think Fu Jiu would win. Fu Jiu didn't show any change in her emotions. She still had that lollipop in her mouth. He rushed to the bottom lane again. He first fought the monsters in the wilderness, then went straight to the enemy's second defense tower. This time, Ling Xiao didn't attack Spadesy from behind, in case he escaped again. Instead, it was a direct confrontation. However, if he wanted to face him head-on, he would have to ask the youth if he wanted to face him head-on. Fu Jiu moved her fingers and dodged another critical hit. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. Of course, he had to give chase. Fu Jiu walked through the grass, and her speed was indeed fast. No one noticed that at this moment, Yunzhong's defense tower, which was already half destroyed, was being attacked by the soldiers. Everyone's attention was on Gan Ling Xiao to see if he could kill Fu Jiu in one hit. Even the commentators sat up straight and couldn't help but say, there should be no problem this time. However, returning to the city again, Fu Jiu returned to the protection range. With the defense tower still around, Ling Xiao would not easily enter the city. After all, it was common sense that entering the city meant certain death. Chapter 450. The FC King of Zone C is like this. He didn't get this by fighting, he got this by hiding. I really don't understand how someone like this can participate in the professional league. Discussions were going on all over the field, but the Supreme Alliance members didn't know what was going on. They didn't feel anything. Spadesy was even better at doing things his own way. For the third time, he was fighting monsters in the wild, heading towards the top lane. At this moment, people heard the second noise. That was another defense tower in Yunzhong fell. Ordinary people couldn't understand what was going on. But anyone who had been in contact with Fu Jiu knew that this guy had a dark heart. To put it bluntly, Hero was a siege game. That guy couldn't be planning to. Lin Feng lifted his head abruptly, glancing at the screen where the character dashed through the bushes. He lowered his voice because of a certain speculation. Do you think it's a coincidence that little Spade has been fighting monsters in the wild? Yunhu glanced at him. What do you think? I feel like he has a premeditated. Lin Feng didn't finish the word premeditated. On the screen, Ling Xiao jumped out of the grass. It was a beautiful move, and a little carelessness would lead to a critical hit. Spadesy lost HP again. The shoutcaster immediately said, nothing can happen more than 3 times. This time, Spadesy can't escape. The people in Yunzhong stood up and shouted, Captain, chase him. This time, don't let him escape. However, just when people thought that Spadesy was going back to the city with that jump, the game character suddenly stopped and pulled back his fingers. As the sword's shadow rotated, Ling Xiao was caught off guard, and he lost 2 drops of HP. No one expected Spade Z to fight back at this moment. The shoutcaster's mouth froze. But in a game, people didn't have that much time to make expressions. After Ling Xiao was pierced, his speed also decreased. At this time, he couldn't win in a one-on-one fight because he didn't have any big moves left. After the shock, Ling Xiao didn't hesitate. He ran to the left and retreated to the defense tower. What a false alarm. The shoutcaster didn't finish his sentence. A figure suddenly appeared behind Ling Xiao. Spade Z's ID was still there. It was just that his movements were too fast. Before anyone could react, he had already rushed over, leaped up, and used a critical strike. Ling Xiao didn't even have the slightest bit of preparation before receiving such a blow. When people saw this scene, they couldn't believe their eyes. But Spade Z's ID was still there. When he landed, his black battle robe glowed with a silver light. This was under the tower. If he killed someone, he wouldn't be able to live. But was that really the case? All the cameras in the venue were pointed at the silver-haired young man sitting in front of the computer. His face was so handsome that it seemed a little unreal. What was even more cool was the youngster's positioning and mechanics. The crisp sound of the keyboard was like rhythmic music. And the youngster's slender fingers were really fast on the keyboard. Before the cameras could lock onto that movement. On the screen, Spade Z's ID flashed and jumped out of Defense City's attack range. It was still shining with silver light. The reflection was in everyone's eyes, and even their eyes were swaying. Following Ling Xiao's fall, they heard the game's special effects sound. Chapter 451. First kill. And it was an undeniable first kill. In an instant, everyone felt like they were going crazy. F***CK, 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 my health bar is going to be empty because of Big Spade's handsomeness. He raised his long sword and crossed the tower to kill. Who else could it be other than me, Big Spade? Wait a minute, I can't waver. I'm here for Almighty Qin, not for Big Spade. I can't be a fan just like this. But this scene was too shocking. From fingers to hair, they felt numb. The Yunzhong team's members were stunned. Their mouths were wide open, and they couldn't close them. The roar of support was so loud that it almost tore the roof off. Everyone was shouting, "First kill! First kill!" The commentator, who had just predicted that Spade Z wouldn't survive this match, was as embarrassed as he could be. Commentator Zhang laughed at the side. Old Jiang, the situation is far from what you said. Old Jiang didn't say anything, because he realized that no matter what he said, it didn't seem right. When it came to shock, no one felt it more than Ling Xiao himself. He just sat there, looking at his black screen, and he couldn't believe that he had died just like that. And he was killed by the toy he looked down on the most. But it was obvious that Fu Jiu didn't want to give the opponent any chance to react. She used the time difference of Ling Xiao's death to control the game character to attack the opponent's third defense tower with one hand, and with the other hand on the keyboard, she said a few words, "I not only know how to dodge, but I also know how to kill." This was a reply to the Yunzhong team, and it was also a slap to the commentator's face. There was no euphemism. To be honest, old Zhang's face was really colorful, and it made people want to laugh. But the fans' attention wasn't completely focused on this, because in that short period of time, the Yunzhong team's third defense tower also fell. Only then did Ling Xiao realize that he had been wrong from the beginning. The opponent wasn't dodging at all. Instead, everything was aimed at pushing down the tower. At that moment, Ling Xiao's face turned very ugly. He thought that he had only died once. He wanted to save the situation, but he realized that he couldn't. Not only that. At this moment, Spade Z's playing style was completely different from before. Spade Z had been hiding all this time. Right now, the youth was like an ice-plated sword, carrying a kind of light that could sweep away 1,000 armies. At that moment, everyone realized that this was a true head-on confrontation. Spade Z. The Spade Z that everyone knew. He was back. He no longer needed to worry about anything else. He only needed to kill. In front of the camera, the youngster was moving the mouse. As the silver hair fell, the familiar sound effect once again rang out in the esports arena. Ling Zhao's body fell heavily onto the ground. There was no longer any obstruction. Fu Jiu leaped over and didn't give Ling Zhao a chance to revive for the third time. She directly attacked the enemy's city. Complete victory. When these two words were displayed on the screen, they emitted a unique golden light. This time, it wasn't just the shoutcaster, even Lin Feng was dumbfounded. W1. Wasn't this too fast? No one knew why, but at that moment, there was a deathly silence. Everyone froze as if a spell had been cast on them. And the youngster, who had done all this, just tilted his head, took off his headphones, and walked towards Qin Emo. With a serious expression, he only said one sentence, "This person, I really just casually confessed." Chapter 452. Now was not the time to talk about this. Lin Feng really wanted to see what was in little Spade's head. Fu Jiu didn't care what other people thought of her. She was trying to get rid of the awkwardness between her and the Almighty. Qi Nemo listened to the youngster's words and leaned back in his chair. His long legs crossed casually. When he looked at Fu Jiu, his thin lips curled up, and there was a smile in his eyes that looked like the first melting of ice and snow. This smile didn't matter. It was captured by the camera and put on the big screen, and it was a stunning beauty. Fu Jiu felt that this Almighty should really be kept at home. Otherwise, if he was allowed to smile freely, many people would be drunk to death. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough money right now. Even if she had enough money, she still had to think about a lot of things. For example, would the Almighty be willing to let her raise him? Qin Emo looked at the youngster, and the corner of his mouth curled up carelessly. "I know." As soon as he said those 3 words, he reached out and rubbed the youngster's fluffy head. His side profile was indescribably handsome. Well played. She was praised again. Fu Jiu was very happy. The most happy thing was that the awkwardness was gone. This scene was very eye-catching at the scene. Especially in the eyes of the CP fans, it was no different from giving out candy. Let me calm down first. When did the Almighty ever look at someone with such a gentle gaze? What's going on? He turned into a protective demon when facing Spade Z. I just want to say that these two people are in the same frame again. They are so handsome. Giving out candy as if no one else is around. I only admire the Almighty. Those two people were indeed so handsome that it was hard to ignore them. Even if Qin Emo was just sitting there, the youngster standing in front of him was an indescribable picture. If one had to describe it, there was only one word: pleasing to the eye. It was because there was too much attention on this side. Therefore, no one noticed that there was an additional beauty in the audience. That beauty was wearing a branded coat, and her face was covered by the collar. But from the curve of her chin, it wasn't hard to see that it was a very beautiful face. But now the beauty was so shocked that she had to lower her voice and ask managerly, who was behind her, "Is that still my son, your young master?" Managerly, it was no wonder that Madam would ask such a question. Young master had never been so intimate with anyone before. It was hard to imagine that one day, the man who was always calm and indifferent would touch someone else's head. This, indeed, didn't seem like it. So that kid is Spade Z. Like a fangirl, the beauty smiled and said, he's really handsome. He doesn't lose to my son at all. As expected of the god who brought me up. Manager Lee coughed lightly. Madam, I think about your request to meet Spade Z. Looks like he's leaving. Before Manager Lee could finish, the beautiful woman interrupted him with an elegant voice. Strange, the competition isn't over yet. Where is that kid going? Manager Lee looked up and almost met young master's gaze. He immediately lowered his eyes. However, he had a guilty conscience. Young master usually just casually glanced at him. He probably went to the toilet, Manager Lee said implicitly. The beauty smiled, is that so? In other words, the chance for a chance encounter has come. Chapter 453. Fujiu didn't know that she was being watched. She only looked at the Yunzhong team with the corner of her eyes. Then it was the 2v2. The Yunzhong team's members all held back their anger. Captain, don't worry, we will definitely get back your face. This was said by the team member who looked down on Lin Feng before. Lin Feng and north of Yin Mountain, one of them is old, and the other was defeated by me. I will win back all the blows Yunzhong team suffered just now. Lin Zhao's eyes darkened, and he calmed himself down. He didn't forget that he was also the captain of the Yunzhong team. He said in a low voice, pay attention to their movements, don't let them steal the turret. When two people are fighting, pay attention to the bushes. That person nodded and looked at his teammate again. The two of them went to the battlefield together, and when they met Lin Feng, they were obviously disdainful. After the commentator with the surname Jiang saw this, he seemed to regain some of his aura and immediately said, Yunzhong underestimated his opponent in the first match, otherwise Spade Z wouldn't have won so quickly. I hope Yunzhong can be serious in the second match. This sentence seemed to be criticizing the Yunzhong team's carelessness, but in fact, it was nothing more than saying that Spade Z was lucky to win this time. He said that after being slapped in the face. Spade Z's fans really wanted to laugh at this commentator's face. However, Lin Feng really didn't expect that his partner would be north of Yin Mountain. After all, he wasn't fighting alone, he was always with Yunhu. They had never been separated. Thinking of this, he turned back to look at the guy who had been with him since he wore diapers, and he felt inexplicably uncomfortable. After Yunhu saw that look, he paused for a moment and then walked over. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows and wanted to ask what he was doing. But he saw that person look down. He was wearing a black wristband on his left hand, and his voice was low and deep, accompanied by the peace of time. Protect your opponent and win well. Yunhu's words were like his personality, always concise and to the point. Lin Feng understood the comfort in his words, and he curled his lips into a smile. Don't worry, I will definitely get you an MVP, so I will have more trophies than you. Yunhu watched the smile on this fellow's face. He really wanted to tell him that he could give him the trophies if he wanted. However, in order to prevent this person from being too arrogant, he just let him sit in front of the computer and didn't say anything more. But this was the scene. It still made people feel the beauty of accompanying each other since they were young. That was why there was a saying in the esports circle. Only when he saw the two of them would he believe that they were childhood friends. It had nothing to do with love. Instead, it was our common perseverance along the way. Chapter 454. Fujiu was so sure that she wouldn't lose this match. Without even looking, she put one hand in her pocket and walked to the side exit. Her teammates were still looking at the youngsters back in a daze. Then, they turned their eyes back to the screen where the match was going on. For some reason, when Little Spade was talking, he thought of his captain's words, trust your teammates on the battlefield. These two people seemed to be surprisingly similar in some ways. Fujiu didn't think too much about it. She was really thirsty. She walked to the vending machine and felt in her pocket. She didn't have enough coins, so she only had one lollipop left. She opened it with narrowed eyes and held it in her mouth. What would it feel like to be so poor that you couldn't even afford a cold bottle? However, Fujiu had her own ways to deal with this vending machine. She just put one hand in her pocket, bent her waist slightly, and moved her fingers under the vending machine. There was a smacking sound. Coke was selected, and a bottle jumped out automatically. Fujiu picked it up with a smile. Just as she was about to open it, she heard a very pleasant female voice behind her. "So you can buy things like this?" Fujiu's fingers paused. She didn't feel embarrassed at all for being caught. She turned around and smiled. "I can't help it. I'm too poor." Manager Lee. "Did you forget that you used 100 yuan to buy a fried skewer?" Young Master Fu. It had to be said that Fujiu was too rowdy, and many people had seen her behavior as a nouveau riche. Manager Lee was one of them. When he saw this kid throwing money around, he felt that this kid couldn't speak. Compared to others' contempt for Fujiu, he felt more pity. If a person only relied on throwing money around to get a sense of existence, did this kid really need someone to care about him? But, looking at the youngster who said that he was poor, he didn't look like he needed anyone's care at all. Instead, he was handsome from the inside out. Manager Lee thought that it was no wonder that young master became good friends with him. If this was the old young Master Fu, young master probably wouldn't have liked him. Fujiu was a smart person. She could tell that these two people were either rich or respectable, especially the madam who had just asked her. Elegant, beautiful, and most importantly, she looked good when she smiled. She gave people a comfortable sense of beauty. And she was the kind of person who would look fashionable no matter what she wore. He was an outstanding person. It was said that the eyes were the worst at lying. Fujiu also believed this. But why did this beauty keep staring at her and drinking Coke? It couldn't be because she was too handsome, right? Fujiu stopped and looked over with her black and white eyes. The movie queen smiled with charming dimples on both sides of her thin lips. "Ah, did you notice that I was looking at you?" Fujiu. "Madam, because it's too obvious, I really can't choose to ignore it." The movie queen smiled even more beautifully. "Child, I didn't expect you to be even more handsome up close. I'm your fan, can we take a picture together?" Fans? No way, she had always thought that her fans were all young. Fujiu turned her arm sideways, wiped her lips with her sleeve, and coughed lightly. Her first reaction was, "Madam, I'm sorry, did you get the wrong person?" Chapter 455. Fujiu paused. Was he really her fan? Spade fan. The movie queen probably noticed the young man's raised eyebrows, so she took out her phone. "Look, I'm playing hero too. You carried me in the game and I became a fan. But when I add you, you always fail. It makes me sad. Is it because I'm too bad that you don't add me?" The movie queen's acting skills were top-notch. At the end of her speech, her beautiful eyes were filled with tears, and even Fujiu couldn't bear to look at her. "Well, I'm just not used to adding other people as friends." This was the first time Fujiu was explaining this to someone, so she stuttered. Sigh, so embarrassing. The movie queen was still resentful. "Then let's take a photo together." Between playing games and taking a picture, Fujiu chose the former. "I'll play games with you again." She was really not used to taking pictures with other people, except with the Almighty. "Do you want to play now?" The movie queen looked very excited. Manager Lee coughed loudly behind her. He wanted to remind Madam why they were looking for the young man. It was all for young master. But it was obvious that the movie queen had long forgotten about it. As a hero player who had just entered the Tao, it was a very happy thing to be able to fight with Spadesy again. The movie queen was about to agree. Manager Lee had no choice but to say, "Madam, this gentleman should still be in the middle of the competition. It's not good for you to play games with him now, right? Aren't people competing in the 2v2? The movie queen didn't understand this, so she politely asked for the youngster's opinion. "You don't have to go back and watch, right?" Fu Jiu took out her phone and smiled. "No need. With Captain here, we will win." "Captain." She finally mentioned her son. The corners of the movie queen's mouth curled up slightly. "You seem to trust your captain a lot." Fu Jiu threw away the empty can of Coke and looked back with a smile. "Almighty Qin is very powerful, and he is also very gentle." The movie queen really couldn't see how her son was gentle. However, which mother didn't like others to praise her son? She couldn't help but have a better impression of the young man in front of her. "Let's sit there, it'll be more convenient for us to play games." Fu Jiu pointed at the resting area. The movie queen immediately agreed. "Okay." When she logged into the game, the smile on her lips never stopped. Manager Lee. "Madam, please wake up. You said you were here to test young master's friend. You really didn't come here to play games with him." But it was obvious that the movie queen's focus was no longer on that. She stared at her phone screen very seriously. Her elegance was still there, but her expression was rather serious. "In a while, just follow behind me. Don't cross the tower to kill anyone. I'll fight in the front, and you'll be the last one. That way, you'll get the kill count," Fu Jiu instructed the person beside her as she manipulated the game character. The movie queen's impression of the youngster increased once again. No wonder her indifferent son treated the person in front of her differently and smiled a lot more than before. It was probably because of the young man's personality. He thought about many things and was considerate of others at the first moment. It was really rare. "Retreat, there's someone in front of you." Fu Jiu's entire being changed when she played the game. She had a light smile on her lips, and her finger movements were very beautiful. Chapter 456. K.O. Fu Jiu led her men and easily took down the enemy's city. The match took less than 5 minutes. The more the movie queen looked at the youngster, the more handsome she felt. "Do you have any intention of developing in our circle?" Fu Jiu didn't ask what kind of circle he was in. Instead, she smiled and said, "I only play esports, not other circles." "It's more than what you're earning from esports. The best actress really wants to poach him. With this kind of temperament, he will definitely be popular in the entertainment industry." The main thing is that the young man's smile was too charming. Fu Jiu curled up her lips. "Madam, I think you have some misunderstandings about me. Although part of the reason I play sports is to make money, another part of the reason is that I like this industry, and I like the people in it even more. Every time I see them, I feel very happy." The movie queen heard the youngster's words and put away her phone with a smile. At that moment, she thought of her son. Clearly, playing games wasn't important to him. But even if he was injured, he still wanted to participate because there were teammates he cared about in the esports arena. Perhaps this was the most important thing. Only by fighting side by side with the person he liked could he live up to his youth. No wonder the two of them could become good friends. Because they are similar in some ways. "What if I let you play sports for free?" The movie queen asked again. "Since you like it, then why don't you do it?" Fu Jiu laughed. "I don't want to fight, I want to have fun, but I don't want to play professionally. I'm a realistic person, and no matter what I do, I have to think about survival first before talking about development. With that said, she raised her eyes and glanced at the time on the clock. She gestured to the movie queen that she was going to take a detour. The movie queen didn't stop the youngster. Instead, she looked at the back view and slowly smiled. Not a bad child. However, no one has ever rejected my invitation. Do you think this child loves money or not? Manager Lee thought for a moment and said, a gentleman loves money in a proper way. The movie queen smiled. I'm relieved to have such a person by Mo.'s side. Mo.'s probably likes people who have their own bottom line the most. Manager Lee nodded and wanted to remind him of something. For example, Madam, don't you think that young master and young master Fu are too close? And that couple. Madam, didn't you hear it? As the manager, Manager Lee had to remind him. The internet seems to be matching young master with young master Fu. This is normal. The movie queen didn't think much of it. We've seen a lot in the entertainment industry. Couples who have a good relationship will be paired together. Besides, the two of them are really good together. Don't you think so? How was she supposed to explain this? Manager Lee felt like he was choking. However, movie queen smiled and said, I wonder when their peripherals will be released. I'm going to buy a bunch of them and bring them home. Manager Lee, Fujio didn't realize that she had left a perfect score in front of the movie queen. But when Fujio walked back into the venue, she felt that the beauty looked familiar. However, he couldn't remember where he had seen it before. But she is really beautiful and well-maintained, she found him familiar. It was probably because of her appearance disorder. With this thought in mind, Fujio sat back in her seat. Chapter 457. 1 kill, 3 deaths. Lin Feng had already died twice. If he died again, he could be revived again. This was the rule of the esports competition. Feng Shang gritted his teeth as he watched. He stuttered, the members of the Yunzhong battle team are too despicable. They only surrounded brother Lin Feng and fought him alone. Even though Fujio wasn't there just now, she knew what the situation was like. If the other side didn't attack and only attacked one person, it was indeed a little sneaky. Old Jiang sneered. It seems like the outcome is set. Supreme Alliance is going to lose this time. The most vicious thing about the Yunzhong team was that they were still sending messages at this time. Lin Feng, are you scared? Are you hiding under the tower and not daring to come out? I say, we are in the middle lane, why don't you dare to come? If you are too scared with the two of us here, but we are alone here. Do you dare to come? In the face of such provocation. According to Lin Feng's temper, he wouldn't have been able to tolerate it. He had always been a violent person, never a person who could tolerate things. But at this moment, he tolerated it. He thought about a lot of things. Before he came, there was a sign that this would be the last time they would fight side by side. Because they grew up together. He knew how much that person hated losing. He hated losing in a fight. Even if his arm was bleeding, he would still take him to the arena. Someone even said that he didn't know how to play basketball. That guy abandoned his gun at home and went to the court to practice for a month. How could such a person like to lose? Lin Feng would always remember that when he was young, he always played in the mud and crickets, and he liked to bully the girls in the courtyard. At that time, they were just in the first grade of primary school. That guy carried his school bag and looked at him coldly. Lin Feng, if you continue like this, I won't play with you anymore. Lin Feng was annoyed. Why? What did he do wrong? I don't like to be with idiots. That guy glanced at him, and it was extremely cold. To prove that he wasn't an idiot, Lin Feng stopped playing with people casually and studied hard. Whatever that guy learned, he would learn it all. That was true at the beginning. But later, he understood that everyone had their own pride. Don't ask important people to do things they don't like. Don't let an important person lose. Lin Feng moved his fingers and his HP bar was full. Then, he rushed towards the bottom lane again. North of Yin Mountain set off at the same time, taking the middle road. The two of them seemed to have discussed this beforehand. Split up. What caught the Yunzhong battle team off guard was that Lin Feng chose to take the bottom lane instead of taking the middle lane because he couldn't take it anymore. One must know that their fighting style was specially trained to deal with Lin Feng. It was all for the sake of annihilating him. Against North of Yin Mountain, this strategy was useless. Indeed, it was useless. North of Yin Mountain was there to restrain them. On the other side, Lin Feng quickly and accurately took down the second defense tower and was attacking the third one. Retreat and defend. The members of the Yunzhong squad shouted. One of them had no choice but to block Lin Feng at the bottom lane. North of Yin Mountain, on the other hand, slashed across the back of the other person and used a critical attack. KO. 2 kills, 3 deaths. The Yunzhong battle team only had one person left now. The moment he heard the sound, Lin Feng quickly turned around and moved beautifully. One to the left, one to the right, he avoided the pursuit until he met up with North of Yin Mountain in the wilderness. Then, he used a stun on his opponent. North of Yin Mountain followed up with a big move. Perfect coordination. Chapter 458. It's not going to be easy for the Yunzhong team. Shoutcaster Zhang touched his chin. Old Jiang didn't think so. Don't forget that Supreme Alliance has the most casualties now. If Lin Feng dies again, it means that North of Yin Mountain is the only one left to fight. Although North of Yin Mountain's strength is not bad, he is an old general after all. He can't handle much by himself, so they definitely won't continue to attack. However, old Jiang was once again slapped in the face by his own words. Because of Lin Feng and the others. They continued to sweep past the bottom lane and attack the tower. They overtook them in a short minute. Everyone broke out in cold sweat for the Supreme Alliance. The people from the Yunzhong team didn't die together, so they had to revive one person first before the other. The one who revived first would be sending himself to his death. He couldn't beat two people at all. They couldn't just watch without going out. Hence, they could only use their skills to find Lin Feng's weakness and kill him first. Lin Feng was easily impatient when he played games. As long as he got close, he would bleed. But this time, the opponent found out that he was wrong. Lin Feng actually took a step back and handed the main attack to Yin Wuyao. Then, he used the stun support. KO. 3 kills and 3 deaths. The city was attacked. Supreme Alliance won. The person who just said he wanted to kill Lin Feng again was stunned. He looked at the figure he had just revived on the city wall. But when he heard the word failure, his face turned pale. The commentator, old Jiang, had completely shut up this time. The fans couldn't help but clap. They weren't Supreme Alliance fans but Yunzhong fans. It had to be said that this match was really exciting. Be it Yin Wuyao or Lin Feng, they charged forward again and again. Such a scene would make people's blood boil just by looking at it. Perhaps they were in different camps but that didn't affect their stubborn admiration. Today, Lin Feng was clearly different. He looked very beautiful in his battle uniform. The first thing he did when he stood up was to look at Yunhu, a big smile on his good-looking face. He was like the most innocent child. However, he realized that Yunhu's expression wasn't very good. What was going on? He had already won, so why was this fellow still putting on airs for him? Hey, you! Before Lin Feng could finish his sentence, Yunhu pulled him over, his voice deep. Look, I'll help you kill your way back no matter what they said about you. When Lin Feng heard that, he said, You're a good brother. Fu Jiu shook her head. With how slow Lin Feng was, it was impossible for Yunhu's wish to come true. However, that was not important now. Most importantly, Qin Mo was about to go on stage. Everyone seemed to be waiting for this scene. How much better was Qin Mo's hand? Would he still have the same beautiful and unparalleled skills as before? Chapter 459. The 5v5 was different from the previous two matches. The members of Supreme Alliance sat down in unison, looking indescribably handsome. They put on their headphones and adjusted their keyboards. This kind of scene could only be seen in the esports arena. The fans couldn't contain their excitement. Almighty Qin's face on the screen was so handsome that it moved their hearts. Go. There was only one word. The accompanying sound system of the game ended. The entire Supreme Alliance team moved out. Feng Shang and Coco went up and down respectively. Yunhu and Fatty were in the group. Qin Mo went wild and assisted in killing people. It had only been less than 2 minutes. Old Jiang, who had said that the Supreme Alliance team would definitely lose this time, was speechless now. The members of the Yunzhong team died one after another. It could even be said that they couldn't withstand a single blow. In fact, the Yunzhong team's ability wasn't like this. It was just that they underestimated their opponent. During the 1v1, Ling Xiao appeared. During the 2v2, they sent their elites. For the remaining group battles. Even if the Yunzhong team had Ling Xiao, they still needed 2 people to stop Qin Mo. What's more, Ling Xiao wasn't there. He was now sitting in the preparation area, his face ashen. His hands were clenched tightly by his sides. Team, annihilated. When the sound effects of the crushing came, the light in the eyes of the Yunzhong team seemed to have been killed. The Supreme Alliance team's playing style this time seemed to be deliberate. It was mainly because of the Almighty's order. There were only 3 words, kill to the end. No one could resist that kind of ruthlessness. It seemed to be saying, didn't you say that our people only knew how to hide? Didn't you say that our people were cowards? Then this time we will crush them head on. The 5 of them really did this, their hand speed was very fast. The Yunzhong team was most afraid of Qin Mo, so they sent 3 people to surround him. 1v3, it was impossible for Qin Mo not to lose HP. But just as he was losing HP, KO. One of the opponents died. Double kill. The second opponent died. The third opponent chased Qin Mo all the way. Just when he thought he had killed Qin Mo first used a big move to stun him, then turned around and used medicine to recover his HP. The shadow of his sword spun and held up a huge wind. If Fu Jiu's fighting style was based on his hand speed, Qin Mo's forte lay in his positioning. No one could see him clearly. They only knew that he killed people within 10 miles without leaving a trace. The light that lit up around him almost covered the entire screen. People watched as the last person in the cloud fell down heavily. The sound effect that shook the bloodline rang out again. 3. Kill. Qin Mo stood there with only a sliver of HP left on his armor. That technique. Chapter 460. That was a slap in the face. The people from Yunzhong couldn't even lift their heads. Old Jiang was even more so. When the camera shone on his face, he wished he could disappear on the spot. In fact, since the end of the duo match, Supreme Alliance had already won. But before, they could say that they had underestimated their opponent or that it was Supreme Alliance's strategy. Now, they had nothing to say. They were wiped out 3 times. Supreme Alliance didn't give them a chance to fight back. Some of the audience who said that there was nothing to see in this match were now silent. Their eyes were shaking, and they really didn't know what to say. This was just a regional match. Supreme Alliance was already like this. What about in the future? What would it be like? Uncontrollably, everyone began to look forward to the next match. Perhaps this was the reason why Chin Mo was named the most valuable esports player. Every time he played, it was hot-blooded and touched people's hearts. Fu Jiu just stood there. She didn't know why, but at that moment, she felt that the Almighty was extraordinarily handsome. Yeah, just for a moment. More handsome than her. Probably because the Almighty's side profile was always full of indifference and righteousness. The people around Fu Jiu had never been like this. How to put it? No matter what he did, he looked like a top student. Even if he was as handsome as the devil. But on the inside, he was very upright. Fu Jiu thought that this might be the difference between her and the Almighty. It was really rare to see such an unwavering person like the Almighty. His righteousness was as dazzling as the light. Fu Jiu laughed. If it was the old her, she definitely wouldn't have anything to do with the Almighty. Because, from a certain point of view, she didn't want to meet this kind of person. She envied him, but she could never become him. She was destined to live in the dark. Hurry up and hug me, how long are you going to look for? Chin Mo walked to the youngster and smiled faintly. Are you crying because of my handsomeness? Fu Jiu suddenly felt that the smile was a little familiar. She showed her white teeth. Yeah, I'm crying because of my handsomeness. Oh right, Brother Mo, let me ask you something. Do you have any cousins? No. Chin Mo's eyes were very faint. Fu Jiu smiled. If there are any cousins that you can introduce to me, I will marry them. As long as they look like you, they will definitely look good. Little spade, your compliment skills are fine. Lin Feng stood over. Even if you want to suck up to Captain, you can't do it this way, understand? Mind your integrity. However, Chin Mo wasn't in a good mood after being praised. Marry her. Was he going to marry a woman? Chin Mo glanced at the youngster who was still smiling. The more he looked, the tighter his chest became. He decided to knock the youngster's head. I asked you to hug me, understand? Yes, a hug. Fu Jiu smiled, opened her arms, and hugged Chin Mo handsomely. Brother Mo, we won. His nostrils were filled with the fragrance of the youngster's grass and the sweetness of the lollipop. When he placed his hand on the youngster's back, he couldn't bear to let go. It was probably because it was too comfortable, like the softness of a quilt after sunning. It made him want to stay like this. Fu Jiu was a little stiff. She thought that he would let go after a short hug. After all, this was what her teammates did just now. She also knew that the Almighty didn't have any other intentions. Because the Almighty hugged her like he was hugging a brother. Chapter 461. Fu Jiu was glad that it was winter again. Her chest was wrapped in bandages, and she was still wearing her uniform. As long as they weren't that close, it would be fine. Chin Mo also felt that he had hugged the young man for a long time, but he didn't let go. He didn't push the young man away until the CP fans started taking pictures excitedly. However, just this scene alone was enough for the girls to start a series of imagination. They wanted to ask Almighty Chin, are you sure you aren't just giving out candy? Oh, there was another theme. The first match of the first round was so exciting, so of course there should be a celebration. This was completely in line with Manager Feng's rich personality. Dinner was booked at the biggest hotel in Linqing. Qin Mo had to deal with some company matters in addition to being the captain of the Supreme Alliance, so he would be late. Shui Yaoyao was sitting next to Fu Jiu. The entire private room was filled with Supreme Alliance members. It was still bustling when the door was pushed open. First, it was the waiter. The waiter seemed to be very polite to the people who came and led the way for them. But when Fu Jiu saw the newcomer, she raised her eyebrows. Wasn't this the lady who said she was a fan in front of the vending machine today? Almost instantly, Fu Jiu felt the atmosphere around her change a little. She couldn't tell what it was like. But Lin Feng's hand that was drinking red wine froze, and Yun, who also sat upright on the side. It was a bit like a junior high student meeting their class teacher. Fu Jiu looked sideways. What was going on? I told you they were here, the movie queen said, smiling elegantly at Fu Jiu. Almighty, we meet again. Pfft. Hearing the word, almighty, Lin Feng couldn't help coughing heavily. He subconsciously winked at Fu Jiu, as if asking, how do you know my goddess? Why does my goddess call you almighty? Fu Jiu really couldn't understand what he meant. She stood up casually and said politely, Madam, I'm very sorry. I don't know how you found your way here, but this is a private gathering of our team. We don't want to be disturbed, so we can't play games with you this time. Hearing that, Lin Feng directly grabbed Fu Jiu's sleeve, which meant to say, sit down, sit down. Fu Jiu continued to raise her eyebrows. Was she impolite just now? Movie queen, that's the movie queen. Lin Feng was still reminding them. On the other side, the movie queen was already laughing. As expected of Spade Z, you have such a personality. Honestly, are you really not going to join our industry? The people in our circle are much prettier than those in the esports circle. You still don't have a girlfriend, right? I can help you with the introduction. Your face and the look in your eyes are simply perfect. Fu Jiu didn't finish. Lin Feng interrupted the youngster's words. He said he can consider it. Fu Jiu. Is this how you betray your teammate? Surprisingly, Yun Hu didn't bother with Lin Feng. What was going on? In reality, Yun Hu didn't care about Lin Feng because he knew something that even Lin Feng didn't know. He had vaguely heard about the identity of this movie queen from his father's generation, but how was he supposed to warn little Spade? Besides, will the captain let us talk about it? More importantly, how did little Spade get to know him? There should be no intersection between the two lines. Yun Hu furrowed his brows. On the other side, the movie queen persisted. Don't worry, filming won't affect your gaming. When you want to play, you can come back, but... Chapter 462. It was Qin Mo. He had just come from the business world and was dressed in private clothes. The fluffy collar of his black coat contrasted with the side of his face, making his appearance seem even more noble and unparalleled. But as soon as he said that, Fu Jiu was dumbfounded. What did the Almighty call the person in front of her? Mom. Mom. Not only Fu Jiu, but all the other team members except Yun, who looked like they were struck by lightning. The movie queen was Captain's mother. That was too shocking. It would be more accurate to call them siblings. After all, the movie queen looked really young. She didn't look like someone who had a son in his 20s at all. In fact, movie queen got married early, and she also had Qin Mo early. Plus, she took good care of herself, and her skin was very good. Most importantly, her skin was in good condition. So in the eyes of outsiders, she looked like she was just 30 years old. No one would have thought that she was already a mother. Fu Jiu's smile was a bit stiff. How should she put it? The Almighty's mother was her fan. This was too embarrassing. Movie queen and didn't think much of it. After being caught by her son, she still held on to Fu Zhou's arm. I just came to cheer you on, and to meet the Almighty who plays games with me. The Almighty who plays games with you. Qin Mo raised his eyebrows and looked at the embarrassed young man. Fu Zhou really wanted to die. That pair of beautiful eyes quietly conveyed a message, Brother Mo, I really didn't know this was Auntie. Qin Mo looked at the young man's expression and curled up the corner of his mouth. Fu Zhou continued to raise her eyebrows, meaning, come and save me. Qin Mo was a big brother after all. Even if he liked to see the embarrassed young man, he wouldn't let it go on for too long. Beauty and the Almighty you are talking about will not join your circle. He is my team member. The movie queen really felt that her son was too indifferent, and the young man looked better. So she held on to Fu Zhou's arm and didn't let go. Almighty, you can contact me anytime after you've made up your mind. Manager Li was also quite embarrassed. After all, it was hard to say that someone like Madame, who was trying to poach a young master so openly. The members of the Supreme Alliance looked at each other and continued to be wallflowers in silence. Fu Zhou chuckled and felt that she had to reject the offer. Auntie, I'm sorry. I'm not interested in the entertainment industry. Movie queen and wouldn't force him to do something he didn't want to do. She sighed. All right then, there will be chances in the future. But that isn't important. As a fan, I'm already happy to be able to interact with you so closely. By the way, you're really handsome. Let me know when the merchandise comes out, I'll get someone to order 999 sets. Fu Zhou. She felt that the Almighty's family was so rich. Come, don't be so formal, sit down. Chapter 463. He liked to give things away. As soon as I saw you, I felt that the men's outfit I brought back from the fashion show in Paris suits you very well. I'll get someone to send it to the Fu family. You have to wear it. Fu Zhou's hand was still held by movie queen, so she could only turn sideways and ask the Almighty for help. But this time, the Almighty didn't help her. Instead, he said with a smile in his voice, there's no competition these 2 days, so you can let him sleep at our place and dress up however he wants. Fu Zhou. She wasn't a doll who could dress up however she wanted. Almighty, you can't do this to your teammate. Qin Mo didn't change his expression and let the youngster size him up. He didn't feel guilty at all. Since he couldn't sleep well without this person, he might as well think of a way to bring him home. That's good. Fu Zhou could clearly see that movie Queen Anne's eyes had lit up. But dressing up as she pleased was out of the question. Because she had to take off her clothes. How could a girl like her take off her clothes in the Almighty's house? Fu Zhou was still thinking of an excuse to reject him. Shui Yao Yao saw this and didn't care anymore. She said, His Highness Zhou and I have an appointment. He promised to do me a favor, so he won't be free these 2 days. Qin Mo's hand that was holding the teacup paused when he heard that. He heard the youngster's voice with a light laugh. Yes, I've already made an appointment. Auntie, maybe next time. Lin Feng was interested. Little Spade, tell me the truth. What are you going to do with Sister Yao alone? Why are you being so mysterious? Fu Zhou didn't know either, but she didn't show it. Instead, she raised her eyebrows and said, I'm not telling you. Hearing that, Qin Mo frowned. It was obvious that she didn't want to tell him where he was going with Shui Yao Yao. Lin Feng clicked his teeth and knocked on the table with his fingers. So this is your date. I want to date a girl too. Up to you, if anyone is willing. Fu Zhou glanced at Yun Hu when she said that, but she realized that he didn't move at all. If it weren't for his deep eyes, Fu Zhou would have thought that he didn't feel anything. But when Lin Feng said he was going to date a girl, he wasn't joking. Tomorrow was Sunday. It wasn't easy to get a day off. Indeed, he wanted to find someone to go on a date and watch a movie or something. He wasn't the only one thinking about it. The group of monks in the team were probably thinking about it too. Lin Feng wasn't wrong about this. Chi Nemo knew his subordinates well, but he never expected the youngster to date someone alone. Of course, no one noticed. This time, when Chi Nemo picked up another vegetable, he used too much force and broke it. He clearly knew that there was something wrong with his thoughts. He had also advised himself that his younger brother did not represent his private property. But Chi Nemo couldn't help thinking that perhaps he should make a pair of handcuffs and ankles to lock someone up. Sigh, I really envy you guys. The movie queen supported her chin with one hand, looking very beautiful. It's good to be a high school student, you can even date, unlike Emo who didn't know what dating was. He didn't have a single girl by his side. Even as a parent, I couldn't enjoy the feeling of knowing my son's puppy love secret. In the face of such ridicule, Chi Nemo only replied with 2 words, troublesome. Do you think girls are troublesome? Fu Jiu took a sip of tea. It seemed like the Almighty was really against girls getting close to him. Chapter 464. After the meal, Lin Feng was still curious. He knew that Fu Jiu wouldn't answer, so he asked Shui Yao Yao. Shui Yao Yao looked at her hands and hid the emotions in her eyes before saying, "It's nothing. My mom is reorganizing her family, and a new brother is going to celebrate his birthday. I want to invite His Highness Jiu to go with me." In fact, Shui Yao Yao didn't want to say this at first. She just said that to help Fu Jiu out. But since she said it, she might as well do it all together. But she didn't know if His Highness Jiu would agree. Thinking of this, Shui Yao Yao looked at Fu Jiu again. Fu Jiu curled her lips into a smile, raised her hand, and rubbed her head. It's my duty to be Yao Yao's protector. Little spade, that's enough. If you keep flirting with Sister Yao, believe it or not, Big Brother will beat you down with force. Lin Feng felt that Fu Jiu was the public enemy of all men. Which man understood girls so well? Movie queen and watched the commotion and felt that the kids weren't bad. She broke into a smile and was about to turn to ask her son something when she caught sight of his cold profile. Her beautiful eyes froze. What's wrong? Chi Nemo realized something and retracted his gaze from the youngster's hand. His voice was indifferent. Nothing. Movie queen and looked over again and didn't find anything wrong. But there was one thing. I heard from Yao Yao that she is going to a birthday party tomorrow. It's for her brother who is reorganizing his family. If I remember correctly, the Jiang family is going to hold a party tomorrow. It can't be such a coincidence. Chi Nemo heard this and looked over at Shui Yao Yao. He didn't say anything. He was never interested in other people's business. Even though he was basically sure that Shui Yao Yao was Jiang's stepsister, he wasn't interested in this topic. Movie queen and looked at the youngster and then at her son. She suddenly felt a little disappointed. You should learn from little Jiu in the future. See how much girls like him. Manager Li said quietly, "Madam, you forgot that young master doesn't lack girls." But what Manager Li didn't expect was that Chi Nemo would say something with a hint of hostility. Soon, he will know that girls aren't that good. Movie queen and didn't think much about it, but the more she looked at the youngster, the more she found him pleasing to the eye. There wouldn't be a girl like little Jiu who wouldn't treat him well. But he and Yao Yao are compatible, I can tell that he treats Yao Yao well. As the captain, you shouldn't be so harsh. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, don't make him train all the time. A good match. After hearing this, Qin Mo's eyes darkened a little. Only then did he notice that the young girl whom the youth was smiling at seemed to be different from when they first met. Although she wasn't very thin now, she seemed to have lost a lot of weight compared to before. She had a round face, and the young man always liked to touch her head. Chi Nemo narrowed his eyes. The coldness in his body didn't dissipate even after Movie Queen and left. But before Movie Queen and left, she said, "You must visit the Qin family in the future." Fujio really wanted to say that she had already been there, but to avoid further trouble, she just nodded and said with a light smile, "Okay." Chapter 465. Inexplicably, Fujio felt that the Almighty's coldness had returned after the meal. But when she looked carefully, the Almighty curled up his thin lips at her, smiling lazily, looking very handsome. He should be fine. Fujio was sure that the Almighty was fine when she got a call from him the next day when she returned to Jiang City. "Come out." 2 simple words, very much in line with the Almighty's style. Fujio raised her eyebrows. "Brother Mo, are you?" As if he knew what the young man was asking, Qin Mo replied faintly, "Outside your house." Hearing that, Fujio didn't waste any more time. She hung up and walked out. She didn't wear a mask, but it was a very cold day. Because it had been snowing since early morning, the outside was covered with a layer of silver. The scene looked like something out of a comic, with snow on the pine trees. Qin Mo was just standing there, wearing a black trench coat. His legs were long and slender, and he was leaning against the Hummer. He had a cigarette between his slender fingers. After seeing Fujio, he raised his eyebrows and said in a magnetic voice, "What are you looking at? Come here." "I'm admiring Brother Mo's beauty." Fujio whistled with her hands in her pockets. That posture just now was so handsome. Qin Mo looked at the young man in front of him. His face was still very handsome, but he dressed more carefully than usual. Even his silver hair was tidied up. Obviously, today was not an ordinary day for the young man. The more it was like this, the more Qin Mo felt that he had to do something. But Qin Mo had always been a person who didn't show his emotions on his face. Even if he had some plans, there wouldn't be any changes in his gaze. Fujio didn't know what he was thinking, so she waved her fingers in front of his eyes. Qin Mo reached out and suppressed the claws. Then he looked at the young man's face again. It was really cute, but because he was afraid of the cold, his nose was a little pink, which made him look small. "Why didn't you wear a mask?" "I came out as soon as I heard Brother Mo was downstairs. I didn't have time." Qin Mo was really happy when he heard this reason. He turned around and took out a mask from the car. "Put it on." "Brother Mo's." Fujio took it and looked at it. Qin Mo grunted and put out the cigarette. "What? You don't like me?" "No." Fujio put on her mask, her voice trembling. "I was just asking." Qin Mo reached out and adjusted the position of the youngster's mask. Fujio truly felt that a handsome face was very tempting when it was too close to her. If this went on, she really wanted to raise a god. "Get in." "Where to?" "I bought sweets for you, not that I've finished them." Fujio didn't expect the Almighty to remember such a thing. His eyes were smiling when he got into the car. "However, I have an appointment with Yao Yao at noon." Qin Mo's hands froze on the steering wheel. His gaze deepened. "I know." The Almighty knew. "That's good." This way, after the Almighty brought her to buy candy, she could retreat and meet up with Yao Yao. She looked like she had a lot on her mind. This birthday party shouldn't be that simple. However, the facts proved that this was not the case. First of all, when they were buying the candy, the Almighty had consulted a professional about the taste and the lack of cavities. It would definitely take some time. Later on, the Almighty asked her to accompany him for a meal. In the end, side note, no charge for more than 1,000 words. This book is from QQ Book City, Cloud Rising Book City, Chidian Book City. No authorization. Reprinting, adaptation, and plagiarism are prohibited. Violators will be prosecuted. Chapter 466. Fujio looked at the dishes on the table and the people sitting around her. The Almighty had never told her that having a meal would involve a long business interaction. Chin Mo sat beside Fujio. Rather than a business meeting, it was more like someone wanted to cooperate with the Chin group. So the atmosphere wasn't that serious. On the contrary, these people treated Fujio with more importance than they had before. How could they not? CEO Chin was really raising his younger brother. Who dared to mess with the Chin family? Compared to the group of middle-aged men, Chin Mo was indeed very eye-catching. He was 1.9 meters tall and had a noble temperament. His shirt was rolled up, revealing his clean wrists. He put the food on the youngster's plate from time to time. No matter how much Fujio ate, there was still a limit. Moreover, she had an appointment to attend. She looked up and said in a low voice, "Brother Mo, that's enough. I can't eat so much. Or do you think it's easy to climb over walls at 1.7 meters? Chin Mo's indifferent words hit the youngster's weak spot. Fujio lowered her head and stuffed another mouthful of food into her mouth. Everything was for her height. But after this mouthful, she still had to think about the time. The bosses beside her smiled lightly. CEO Chin is really good to his brother. He's still young, so he has to be looked at. He doesn't look manly at all. Chin Mo's facial features were deep and handsome. He was obviously very young, but he was reserved and calm. The bosses couldn't help but laugh, and they all talked about how to manage their younger brothers. Fujio listened with her head tilted, and she looked at her phone again. Time was really tight. Fujio was also afraid that Shui Yaoyao would get anxious from waiting, so she lowered her eyes and sent a WeChat message. "Where are you now?" "I'm coming over." Chin Mo was sitting beside Fujio, so of course he could sense the youngster's movements. He had a tall nose and a glass of red wine in his hand, but his eyes were looking in the youngster's direction. When he realized who the youngster was texting, his long and narrow eyes instantly turned deep and cold. Chin Mo didn't show his transformation at all. He just used strength in his fingers, and the way he held the glass made him look like a mixed blood, more like a devil. After receiving the address, Fujio calculated the time and said, "Brother Mo, you guys eat first. Yao Yao's place isn't near here, so I'll go over earlier." Chin Mo's face was expressionless as he replied faintly, "Okay." However, when the young man stood up, Chin Mo's eyes were cold to the extreme. The person next to him noticed something and hurriedly said, "Young Master Joe, you shouldn't leave yet. President Chin drank a lot today and drove here. If you leave, how will he go back?" Fujio paused, as if she was hesitating. Chin Mo glanced up, his brows arched beautifully. "I'm fine, my stomach isn't feeling well. I'll get someone to fetch me when I'm better." It would have been better if the Almighty hadn't said that. Hearing that, Fujio immediately sent another message. "Pick your clothes first, I'll be there later." After sending the message, Fujio put her phone into her pocket and said to Chin Mo, "Go back now and take your medicine." Normal people wouldn't dare to interfere with Boss Chin's business. After listening to the youngster's words, the bosses felt that they had to watch their words and actions when they saw this hedonistic young master of the Fu family in the future. Chapter 467. Of course, those bosses wouldn't disagree. They politely asked Chin Mo to go home and have a good rest. But in their hearts, they were muttering, Boss Chin doesn't usually act like this after drinking. How much did he drink? He can't even put down a bottle. Why did he say that his stomach was uncomfortable after one drink? Maybe he had something to do at home, so he made up an excuse. However, Boss Chin never seemed to find excuses. In the past, he would leave right after discussing business, and he would always be the handsome and dignified one. Although they were older than Boss Chin, they couldn't compare to him in terms of aura. Hence, after seeing Chin Mo's reaction, the bosses exchanged glances with each other, their eyes filled with doubt. The two of them still didn't drive. Fu Jiu would only be 18 after the new year, so she didn't even have a driver's license. How she wished she had an old scooter. Or, she could buy one later. It was winter, and the old scooter was warm. Skateboarding was fine, but it wasn't convenient when she met the Almighty. When Fu Jiu was a hacker, she often suffered from stomach problems, so she knew how uncomfortable it was. They couldn't always take taxis when the Almighty was in pain. The two of them arrived at the military compound. Taxis couldn't enter this place at all. Most of the cars here were license plates. The driver was in a dilemma. Chin Mo rolled down the window, and that handsome face appeared. The soldier saluted and said, "Let us pass." It wasn't strange to see someone in a military uniform here. The driver probably didn't do this kind of work, so he found everything strange. Fu Jiu was still looking at the time. Chin Mo didn't roll up the window, but said faintly, "If you have something urgent, you can leave first. I'll drink some hot water by myself when I get back." "By yourself?" Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. "No one at home?" Of course, Chin Mo wouldn't say that he gave all the servants the day off, so he just calmly said two words to the youngster, "No." Fu Jiu looked sideways. She didn't know why, but the Almighty reminded her of herself in the past. When her stomach hurt, she would lie down at home and drink water. In such a big room, she would be the only one there. When the pain got worse, she would drink. Anyway, it wouldn't hurt when she woke up. "I'll be fine as long as I can get there around 4 o'clock. Fu Jiu reached out and rolled up the window for him. "Don't stand in the wind if your stomach hurts. I'll make you some porridge later." Chin Mo chuckled. "Edible?" Fu Jiu looked serious. "Porridge is fine." The facts proved that, even when Fu Jiu was cooking porridge, she needed the Almighty's guidance. "Your rice hasn't been washed yet." Chin Mo looked at the youngster who was about to boil the rice in the pot and reminded him in a calm voice. The Chin family's kitchen was semi-open, and the decoration was very high-end. Fu Jiu could almost see the man leaning against the wall with his eyebrows slightly arched. He was a little handsome, but also a little helpless. Fu Jiu knew why the Almighty was helpless, so she explained while washing the rice, "I just forgot." Chin Mo looked at the youngster and lifted his thin lips. He said nonchalantly, "I trust you." Fu Jiu. His tone was really insincere. In order to prove that he still had the strength, Fu Jiu took out the chopping board to show off her knife skills. He had to admit that the ham and cucumber were cut beautifully. But then, Fu Jiu forgot when was the right time to put it in. Chapter 468. "Brother Mo, you won't have any friends if you keep talking like this," Fu Jiu said as she lowered her head and unlocked her phone. "Even if I don't remember, I can still search for tutorials. Cooking porridge is as simple as that, right?" Chin Mo looked at the youngster's fair skin when he lowered his head. It was probably because his skin was so good that it looked like the finest jade and was even glowing. Qin Mo suddenly reached out his hand and pinched the back of Fu Jiu's neck. Fu Jiu looked sideways. What? Don't show your back to others in the future. Qin Mo's voice was very calm. Fu Jiu chuckled. Don't worry, I won't do it when I'm fighting. Qin Mo frowned. Did this guy really have no boundaries between men and women? If that was true, why didn't he hear his warning? Or was he too inexperienced? Qin Mo smiled and stood behind Fu Jiu. After searching for tutorials, the youngster's movements were very smooth, but the noise was a little loud. In the end, the Almighty couldn't stand it anymore. He held Fu Jiu's hand that was holding the spoon, and he said in a noble and restrained manner, "Patience is the most important thing when cooking porridge. Who would mess around like you? That's my style. Brother Mo, you don't understand." Fu Jiu was very good at talking about crooked ways. Qin Mo curled his thin lips, his fingers holding the porcelain jade-like wrist in his palm, but he didn't say anything. In the semi-open kitchen, the two of them stood one after the other, holding the same spoon in their hands. Because of the height difference, the youngster seemed to be hugged from behind by a man. Fu Jiu felt that this position was too intimate. The Almighty let go of her hand first, and his eyes were deep. Okay, let it cook for 20 minutes. After saying that, Qin Mo freed his left hand and pressed it against his stomach. Fu Jiu directly reached out and put the Almighty's hand on her shoulder. This way, the two of them were even closer. When Qin Mo lowered his head, the corner of his mouth curved up. It seemed that he had to use both soft and hard tactics to manage his little brother. Fu Jiu was indeed susceptible to soft tactics. She had a handsome face, and when she did household chores like cooking porridge, she was like a stylish vampire bat, flying here and there. In the end, she happily served a big bowl of vegetable porridge to the Almighty. In fact, Fu Jiu had also noticed that the Almighty hadn't eaten anything during the meal. Qin Mo sat on the wooden chair and looked at the bowl of Big Mac on the dining table. When he thought about the youngster's usual appetite, he wanted to laugh again. Fu Jiu didn't understand what the Almighty was laughing at. Could it be that her plate presentation was too ugly? But what kind of presentation was needed for a bowl of porridge? Fu Jiu thought about this and looked down at her phone again. She planned to pack up and leave after the Almighty finished his bowl of porridge. However, she didn't know if it was because the Almighty was too elegant when eating. The bowl of porridge showed no signs of diminishing. The Almighty ate really slowly. In Fu Jiu's words, she could directly go shoot posters. In fact, Qin Mo wasn't really hungry at first. He was just surprised that the porridge tasted good, so he couldn't help but take 2 more bites. After finishing a bowl of porridge, it should take a lot of time. He didn't expect the young man to give him such a big bowl. However, the bigger the bowl, the longer it would take to eat, right? However, at this moment, there was a sudden sound from the door. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.